Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all our participants, dignitaries, and our highly esteemed speakers to the online seminar Kharif Crop Outlook, organized by the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry in association with Business Standard Smart Business. All participants will be muted to avoid any disturbances during the course of this session. To consume less bandwidth and have clarity, you may like to stop video streaming at your end. Kindly post your relevant queries in the chat section so that the same can be addressed during the Q&A session. To begin with, may I request Mr. Rajiv Poddar, President, IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to present the welcome address. Over to you, Mr. Poddar.
Thanks. Good evening. It's my pleasure to extend a hearty welcome to each one of you. On behalf of IMC and my own, I would like to thank our speakers, Sanjeevji, Rajniji, Madanji, Chandrasekharji, and Ashishji for being part of this event. A special thanks to Business Standard Smart Business for associating for the event. Currently, the world is fighting the COVID-19 to most of the economic activities such as manufacturing, retail, and services. However, even during such a challenging time, the agriculture the same is
I think we have lost connectivity with him. Sir, would you mind? Sir, would you mind closing your video because your internet connectivity is very no, not mute, video.
Now, is better now?
No, sir. It's like yeah, it's jittery, but okay. Can you speak now, sir?
Oh, I'm so sorry about this.
Yeah.
It's better now?
Yeah. Now
sorry
it is
about
better.
this. Sorry about this.
Yeah.
So I was the same is observed in India, where the COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted the growth engine of the Indian economy and taken a toll on the government's revenue collection. India's economy has contracted sharply by 23.9% in Q1 FY21, shrinking to the lowest level on record. Barring agriculture, all other sectors witnessed a sharp contraction in growth rates. It is observed that after several years, agriculture sector has witnessed 3 consecutive good harvests: Rabi 2019, Kharif 2019, Rabi 2020, and likely to witness the fourth one as well, Kharif 2020. Due to the above normal rainfall, input utilization, planted areas, and agrimony of having a bearing on crop yield and output. As per the latest data, the actual rainfall during 1st June to 2nd September 2020 for the country as a whole has been 9% above normal, and the total area sown under Kharif crop as on 4th September 2020 has been 109.5 million hectares, up by 6.3% year on year. In my opinion, reforms recently initiated by the government Atmanirbhar Bharat strategy has also provided an impetus to the agriculture sector. An economy is said to be Atmanirbhar if it produces sufficient amount of goods and services for its domestic need, along with surplus for exports to earn foreign exchange. We believe that in the long run, growth in the agriculture sector will ensure India's food security and supply chain in a self-sufficient manner. It will also lead us to the Prime Minister vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant country, and help India back to its feet quickly amidst COVID-19 pandemic. Kharif crop season planted in June, July and harvested in September, October, covering mainly rice, pulses, cereals, oilseeds and cotton, contribute to our country's food security and fiber security. A good harvest can mitigate the economic downturns. This provides the best opportunity to bring together domain experts to discuss what will be expected from this year's Kharif harvest and the way forward. We look forward to hearing from today's expert speakers. Before I conclude, I would like to say a few words about IMC. Established in 1907 and having its headquarters in the heart of the city of Mumbai, the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry is an apex chamber of commerce, trade and industry in the western region with its membership base of over 5,000 members and over 150 trade associations affiliated to it. Together, it represents and advocates interest of over 4 lakh businesses and industry establishments across the country from diverse sectors of industry. Once again, I welcome you all to this thought-provoking session. My apologies for the internet issues. Thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poddar. May I now request the moderator of the session, Mr. Sanjeev Mukherjee, Agriculture Editor, Business Standard, to present the theme address and then take it forward. Over to you, Mr. Mukherjee. Just a minute. Kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah, good evening all. Am I audible?
Little soft, sir. So could you take the mic closer to you?
Yeah. Is it okay now? Can you all hear me?
No. Yeah. Okay, but still soft.
Hello?
Yeah, this is fine.
Fine. Yeah. So good evening all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives us immense pleasure to welcome you all with Indian Merchants Association to this Business Standard Smart Business event. We are very glad to be associated with Indian Merchants Chamber for this event. As you know, Business Standard is a preferred among serious financial readers of India. It's for last 45 years now. And we are very thankful to our readers like you for this recognition as a quality leader and in appreciating our editorial integrity, which is best maintained by India's best team of financial journalists and eminent contributors. Business Standard had always tried to give relevant and actionable content to our readers in the newspaper and at events like these that bring industry and policy makers together. On behalf of Business Standard, I hope it will be an insightful session for all of us. And a little bit about the session and about the theme. As we all know, as Mr. Poddar also very rightly mentioned, that we are consecutively seeing very good Kharif harvest as well as Rabi harvest. And probably this is one of the Kharif production, which is very eagerly watched by all sections, whether it is the business people, whether economy, general public, because as Mr. Poddar said, and as we all know, in all this gloom and doom, it is only agriculture which is sustaining and which is agriculture which is showing some spark. And we all are very eager to know whether this spark will sustain for the next few quarters, for the next few months, so that there is an impetus to the whole economy, because rural sector, as we all know, has been the backbone and has proved in this COVID lockdown that it is perhaps the only sector which can sustain all kinds of pulls and pressure. And it is a real pleasure for me to welcome this stellar cast of speakers that we have. Mr. Chandrasekhar, and all of the three speakers that we have been long time followers and long time watchers of India's agriculture, and also have been hugely people who have contributed a lot to the agriculture sector, and they have been following this sector for I don't know for how many years. In fact, in all my journalistic career, I have seen Madan and Mr. Chandrasekhar and Mr. Rajni as being following this sector even before I started by covering this. So it is really a pleasure for me to welcome all three of you and all three eminent speakers. To start with, I'll first like to start with, as usual, Mr. Chandrasekhar, and he is one of the oldest who has been covering the agriculture sector, I know, and his columns, his pieces are most read by all sections. So, sir, just to start with you, what is your perspective of this Kharif crop, and in the given light that we are now? Just if you can share your perspective, and I'll request all the speakers to limit themselves to 10 to 15 minutes so that we all can have a very fruitful interactive session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. It's such a delight for me to be with you as my say well professional colleague. co-journalist. I have a couple of slides to show to put things in perspective. Are you able to see the slide?
Yeah. No, not yet.
What should I be doing, Selvi?
Sir, share screen, click on share screen and select the presentation.
1 second. Come on. But I can't see that share screen anywhere.
It's on the bottom where your mute, unmute controls are there.
Why is it happening every time? Oh, share screen. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, all right.
Okay,
right.
sir, we can see. It's
Is that
visible.
okay?
Yeah, just
all right. Perfect. Okay, let me go to the first slide. How do I?
It's the first slide, sir.
F5.
I know, but the next
F5.
one. The
next
F5.
one, sir, the
Down arrow key.
Down arrow key.
No, but it's not moving. That's the tragedy. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I cannot.
Anyway, I think it's okay. Yeah. It's okay because I want to show some data, and that's why I put this slide.
Okay.
Okay. The first one, I just want to give a backdrop and stop being at the end of 10th or 11th or 12th minute, Sanjeev.
Okay.
First, I want to give the backdrop to our discussion. We had in April, in the month of April, forecast of a normal southwest monsoon by the India Meteorological Division. Then we had good subsoil moisture. I'm sure many of us remember a cyclone Amphan that happened in sometime in May, which brought soil moisture to East India. Then we had cyclone Nisarga in western parts of India, which brought cyclone 1st, 2nd, 3rd June, if I remember correctly, that brought soil moisture to the western parts of India. And then, of course, we had the input supplies were quite normal. Our discussion with a number of input suppliers said there was no issue, but there was an issue with soybean seed availability. Soybean seed availability was very tight, and I have reason to believe that a lot of spurious seeds, old 2-3-year-old unviable seeds have also been planted. So that's a matter of concern. But anyway, it was a national lockdown period, and therefore migrant workers were back home. Therefore, more labor was available, and that's how the planting picked up momentum right from day one because of soil moisture, good monsoon, onset of southwest monsoon over Kerala on 1st of June, etc. And the planted acreage expanded. And then currently we are actually in a phase of weak La Nina. La Nina is the opposite of El Nino. El Nino brings dry conditions. La Nina brings slightly wet conditions, and that's why we have reasonably good rainfall across India. And therefore, all this is a backdrop for a substantially larger acreage of planting, and the numbers are all here. Slideshow.
Could you just share the screen again?
Okay, I think that's it. Okay, now so this is a slide where I want to show.
No, sir, the slide is not shared. Can you share it? Please go to share screen again.
I'm not able to do that. Right, it's not showing shared screen. That's my problem.
Somebody is explaining something in the chat as well.
No, but that is after he shares the screen.
Okay.
No, is it visible now or is not visible?
No, you haven't shared screen, sir.
Jesus Christ, so what should I be doing?
Click on the share screen, sir, and select the...
I'm not able to... okay, now I can see share.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right. I think I need to learn.
And Mr. Mukherjee, you'll have to be louder. Huh?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, now we can
Sanjeev,
hear.
You can see, okay? All right,
Yes.
now let's look at this table. This is a key table which actually I want to present. The target for maize production this year, the Kharif season, because it's a Kharif and Rabi crop, Kharif season target is 21.3 million tons. The area planted is about 8.1 million hectares, almost virtually unchanged from what it was last year. And the production target, the production estimate, which is my estimate primarily, all the production estimates are mine. This is 20 million tons vis-a-vis last year's 19.6 million hectares of maize production. Pulses are going to be performing certainly better. The target for production is 10.1 million tons. The acreage is 13.8 million tons, which is at least 6 lakh hectares higher than it was last year. Last year was 13.2 million hectares, if I remember correctly. And last year's production was 7.7 million tons. This year, I'm expecting production between 8.5 and 8.7 million tons. So there is a substantial, a million ton, possibly a million ton increase in pulses production, primarily because of a good distribution of rainfall and higher acreage by about 6 lakh hectares. Oil seeds target for production is 26 million tons. Acreage has gone up. This year it is 19.6 million tons. Last year acreage was 17.7 million tons. Close to 2 million hectares, 20 lakh hectares, 19 lakh hectares is an increase in oilseed area, primarily groundnut and soybean, of course. And last year's production was 22.3 million tons. This year, my expectation is at least 1.2 million tons higher at 23.5 million tons of oilseed production, primarily groundnut, soybean, sesame seed, Niger seed, castor, etc. Cotton is another big story, really speaking. Uh, Acreage last year was 12.7 million hectares. This year it's slightly gone up by 2 lakh hectares to 12.9 million hectares. Target for production this year is 36 million bales, 360 lakh bales of 170 kilograms. Last year's revised fourth estimate of the Agriculture Ministry of the Government of India, the production of cotton was 35.5 million bales. They said it could be slightly higher at this year. It could be 37 million bales of cotton production, which means if we are going to slightly exceed the target as far as cotton production is concerned, then it's going to be at least 1.5 million bales higher than what it was last year. Sugarcane again is another great story. Substantial expansion in acreage by at least 3 lakh hectares vis-a-vis last year. The production target this year for cane is 390 million tons. And last year's production was 355.7 million tons. My estimate for this year is again that we will just about meet the target. Cane production will be 390 million tons, which will give us approximately 30 million tons of sugar. Domestic consumption is just about 26 million tons, and therefore we'll be left with a surplus in 2020-21 of at least 4 million tons. And therefore this is the crop. Otherwise, you have rice, and then you have other coarse cereals, etc., which of course are doing quite well. But these are the 4 or 5 crops which are very, very keenly tracked by market participants. And these are crops where we have seen high levels of price volatility. For example, look at maize. We had last year maize prices going to 2,200, 2,300. Then it collapsed to 1,200, 1,300, just about recovered, but it's still going to going to it's going to fall below um, the minimum support price. The last slide, I'm not able to move that slide, but I'm going to speak. Let me very quickly, in 2 or 3 minutes, talk about crop prices and procurement possibilities. I can see maize, a minimum support price is 1,850 rupees a quintal, but at the moment it's trading at between 1,300 and 1,400. 1,300 and 1,400. Um, 1,300 and 1,400 rupees a quintal. Uh, and pulses, we have seen over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, prices have started to move up. And therefore, in case of pulses, the prices are very close to the minimum support price, or in some cases, it's actually exceeded the minimum support price, primarily because of import restrictions and delayed issue of permits for imports, etc. And this price performance of pulses over the last few weeks and coming at the time of harvest should put much less pressure on the government of India, NAFED, which is the procurement agency for procurement. Over the last 2 seasons, we found that NAFED was under huge pressure to procure and support the prices. I think the kind of pressure that they faced in the last 2 years, they will not face. Therefore, there will be very limited need for procurement. Oilseed prices, I expect, are going to be lifted. And currently, they're just about moving up a little above the minimum support price, primarily because of slowing import and, of course, rising crude palm oil prices, which both are allowing oilseed prices to rise. We are going to face a bumper groundnut crop. There's no doubt at all. And that's a good augury. Therefore, more of groundnut oil availability, more groundnut for export also. Cotton, my worry is that it will need huge amount of procurement by the Cotton Corporation of India, because there is demand destruction because of the pandemic, national lockdown. Mills are shuttered. Mills are, of course, beginning to start. They're working now, but yet there'll be huge pressure, enormous pressure on the Cotton Corporation of India, given the 37 million bales of cotton production and a carry in of, I don't know, another 10 million bales or so. But we're going to be sitting on mountains of cotton in this country with very limited export prospects. And that's again going to put pressure, in my opinion, on cotton prices. I think with this, Sanjeev, I will stop, having given a perspective of what the crop looks like. Yeah, thank you very much.
That was really insightful as usual, Chandrasekhar sir, with so much of details. Am I audible now? Is the
No,
voice?
sir, you're very soft, sir.
Now, hello.
Yeah, now it is better.
So I have to hold this.
If you keep the mic closer.
Yeah. So these are the things that we are getting gradually adjusted because of all the pandemic around. Next speaker to my mind is Rajni Panikar, and Vice President Philip Capital India. Rajni, as I said in the beginning, is one of the oldest and one of the keenest followers of the agriculture sector. And I know we are seeing after each other after a very long time, almost 10, 11 years. So the last time Rajni was in Angel Commodities in those days. Good to see you, Rajni, after such a long time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Such a long time. Yeah. So let's start, and let's hear your perspective on the Kharif crop, and what do you think of the Kharif outlook, and which are the crops you see a production boost, which are the crops you see prices falling, which are the crops you see procurement moving up, and your perspective on the Kharif crops.
Right. So let me just first start the share screen. Can you see my presentation now?
It's coming up. It's coming up. Just give it a second. Yeah. Now go on to the slide. Yeah.
Perfectly there. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Done.
So the presentation is clear. Yeah. Right. So my screen is now visible to all, right? Please give me a confirmation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So thank you for the introduction. Great pleasure once again, Chandrasekhar sir, to be presenting the Kharif outlook as always. Of course, these are COVID times. Otherwise, we would have been in the IMC conference room. Or all the spectator, all the audience there with you by the side. It was an altogether different experience that I've had for so many years. And this year is a completely different experience, but I'll try to do my best in whatever we track for the Kharif crop prospects. Like the slide states, we would be giving a quick view on what the southwest monsoon season has been, what we therefore expect the Kharif production outlook to look like, and therefore the implication on inflation, and of course after that our view basis inflation, a view that we have on where the interest rates are going. So that's basically what is the gist that I'm going to present. Of course, Chandrasekhar sir has quickly given a very good start to the presentation in terms of where we are in terms of the monsoons, in terms of the acreage, in terms of production prices. So some of my slides could be repetitive, so I will skip through that and then just concentrate more on what we think are the production potential and inflation estimates. So, like Chandrasekhar sir said, this has been a very good monsoon season so far. And like he correctly said, we also had an advantage in terms of the pre-monsoon season, which is basically from March to May. We saw 20% above normal rainfall, so we had excellent subsoil moisture conditions. Almost all forecasts did say that we would be heading into normal or above normal monsoons, and those forecasts have been bang on. The chart, what is tries to show is basically the deviation from normal monsoons. So the bars, which is above zero, shows the subdivision which received higher than normal rainfall. The bars below, of course, as logic would say, is areas that received below normal rainfall. Now, this is a snapshot across from year 2010, just to give a view as to we've seen years of very low rainfall, as you can see in 2014, 15. So compared to that, when we look at 2020, it's definitely, it's definitely a pledge. It's definitely a comfortable situation to be in. Most bars, except for, of course, the northwest, Rajasthan are having some concerns. Otherwise, we've got good rainfall across all regions. So as of now, as of this date, from June 1st to September 16th, the country as a whole has received about 868 millimeters of rains, which puts it about 7% above normal. Therefore, all the forecasts for above normal rainfall has been proven to be correct. Now, when we try to take a micro view into how the rainfall has been, then the chart on the left with the yellow line basically shows what a normal rainfall should look like. And then it plots, the blue bars plot what has been the actual rainfall. So if at a first glance, it feels like we see all these blue bars, which is exceeding the normal into August, into June, of course into July, we did see these rainfall being below normal. But when it comes to what we would like to highlight, as I've written in the slide, is that when it comes to Kharif production, such kind of a rainfall pattern that we have seen this year is pretty ideal, because when the plant goes into sowing, that is when you require a good amount of moisture. And after those heavy rainfall, the June backdrop, as we call it, the rainfall, when it receded into July, actually helped growth. And then into the later part of August, when development is required, we did see an increase in rainfall. Of course, towards August, we did miss a few heartbeats. We did have palpitation because it looked like monsoon is going too much, too fast, and perhaps we would have crop losses. But of course, towards the end of August, as you can see, and early September, this has receded. So across India, we have put on the right-hand side the division-wise rainfall. So we saw in June, it got 18% above normal rainfall. In the month of August, it has seen above normal rainfall. July, of course, there were some concerns, but overall, um, we are of the opinion, as we can see in this next slide, where we put the Kharif crop progress, that most crops into planting stage from May to July, into harvesting stages from October to December. So we received rainfall wherever wherever we required when it was in the sowing phase. We've had good rainfall, and then therefore our conclusion is that currently the weather condition has been picture perfect. That is what we are looking at this year's monsoon progress so far. Of course, there has been some, apart from weather, certain concerns on pest infestation, like whitefly or pink bollworm, locusts. Locusts, of course, made headlines across the country. So apart from weather, of course, these were some of the concern areas that we would say, given that weather was nearly picture perfect, and something that we will perhaps have to look into as the harvest comes in and its impact that it has had. Uh, and of course, when it comes to states like MP, Karnataka, which receive persistent rains, we have some concerns for the shorter duration pulses crop like moong, urad. This again is a quick snapshot on how the planting progress happened, given the fact that we had nearly perfect rainfall. We saw that in July 3rd itself, that means 1 month after the southwest monsoon begins, we had about nearly 40% of the Kharif crops already planted. By August, this was 90% completed. So we had excellent rainfall, supported by, of course, excellent acreage pace also. And like Sir said in his presentation as well, which is also a factor that we would like to include, that availability of labor across most of the states had improved due to the migration that we saw from cities to rural areas. And this also aided in timely and perhaps a little ahead of timely acreage across most states for this year. Now this I would, of course, this is what Chandrasekhar sir has already spoken about as to how the Kharif acreage has been higher compared to last year. So overall, we are seeing a Kharif acreage which is about 6% higher than last year. Across the various crop groups, whether it is rice, whether it is pulses, coarse, whether it's pulses, rice, oil seeds, um, sugarcane, cotton, we have seen an acreage increase. The reason being, of course, as discussed, availability of labor, correct start, timely start to monsoons, uh, timely distribution of monsoon. All this has helped, and therefore we are in a season where we have seen a nearly 6% increase in acreage compared to last year. Castor, of course, is one crop that highlights, that shows that it is down about nearly 16%. The reason, of course, is something that we would like to highlight in this particular slide, where we are talking about Kharif acreage shifts. Now, if you look at how though acreage has increased year on year, there has also been certain shifts that we have seen. And overall, here again is what that factor on castor gets highlighted, where acreage for castor has come down by about 15%. Otherwise, most of the Kharif crops, whether it's rice, pulses, cotton, has seen an increase. The reason, of course, for some of the crop, if we have to highlight, for oil seeds, we saw a sharp increase in acreage by about 10%, largely driven by groundnuts, which saw acreage increase to about 51 lakh hectares from 39. It's an influence of course, the high prices that groundnuts saw this season. So when we are talking about acreage shift, we have tried to highlight that the reason for the acreage shift has been either because of prices, rainfall, or government schemes. So for oil seeds, we are of the opinion that the acreage that has increased in oil seeds is a result of the high prices, especially for groundnut. When it comes to castor, we are seeing a decline in acreage, largely because there has been a shift for castor, major growing areas in Gujarat, to cotton and groundnut. And also, castor is something, is a crop that we consider it as to be a crop of last resort. So when we have years with low rainfall, that's when you see more of castor getting sold. So this year with timely monsoon, castor therefore took a backseat. But of course, amongst the Kharif oilseeds, it's not a major crop of concern. So I think, the world is not going to miss the decline in castor production, hopefully. One key factor that we wanted to highlight is this increase across all Kharif crops in the southern peninsula. So whether it is rice, which has seen a nearly 37% increase, or pulses, or cotton, or oilseeds, I think we are being able to pinpoint this acreage increase in the southern peninsula to what we would say as an influence from government schemes. And most of this increase that we see in the southern peninsula has come from Telangana and Karnataka. Now, Telangana, as many of you would be aware, runs this scheme, farmer support scheme called the Raitu Bandhu. Now, this is basically supports the farmers by giving them about 5,000 rupees per acre twice a year, because they want to support the farmers financially, so that their inputs that is required goes in time. And this is actually, we can see increasing acreage there across most crops. Maybe crop acreage that was not getting not getting planted because of lack of funds is now coming. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand as to how there across all crops there has been an increase. Also this year, in the Raitu Bandhu scheme, we hear that the government also has chosen areas in Telangana where they have promoted farmers to choose crops according to the conditions there. So there's a government incentivized or a government promoted acreage for particular crops that has been promoted in states like Telangana. And that, of course, is showing in the acreage shifts, in the acreage growth pace for these states. So interesting aspects we thought we would just share in terms of not just acreage increasing, but the acreage shifts that we are seeing in regions and across crops. Apart from that, of course, the government MSP, COVID in terms of increased labor available has also helped in increasing the acreage this year. For Kharif MSP, we had seen a push towards oilseeds because we want to be an edible oil sufficient country rather than importing 70% of our edible oil requirements. So we did see soybeans, groundnuts, etc., getting about 5 to 4% increase in MSP over last year. Similar increase has been given for certain coarse cereals like bajra, which saw 7%. So apart from monsoons coverage, apart from the price, it's always also the government schemes, the MSP, which in a way has resulted in most of these Kharif acreages increasing and the crops being chosen for the season. Now, this is the slide that we would like to put our focus on. It is basically the Kharif production forecast. Now, what we have done is that we have taken two scenarios. The first scenario, we have taken the government acreage numbers for 2021 and multiplied it by the average 3-year yields. So the scenario one therefore captures normal production scenarios because when an yield is averaged over the last 3 years, it adjusts for the sharp variances in the recent years, and when applied to the acreage, it gives a fair estimate as to what this season's Kharif production would be. We are talking about, I would like to concentrate more on the percentage increase because the numbers might just get lost. So in the scenario one, because we've had good monsoon, when we analyze that with the acreage pace, which has been higher, about 6% compared to the previous years, to such a scenario, when we put an average 3-year yield, we are looking about for an increase across most of the Kharif crops, whether it is rice, whether it's pulses, oil seeds, sugarcane. Now, when it comes to the two red spots, which might raise some eyebrows, we just want to perhaps, when we are discussing in the scenario 2, able to explain what we mean by why we think that this year's coarse cereals could be perhaps a little lower, or why cotton could be a little lower compared to last year, which Chandrasekhar sir also was saying could be a large crop. There's no denying. But then what happens is, because these crops are sown later into the year, into the season, especially for cereals. When we have timely withdrawal of monsoon, the 3-year average, especially we had seen for bajra crop, the yield reduces, and therefore when we analyze a 3-year average yield to a coarse cereal with normal withdrawal of monsoon, it shows that there could be a slight decline. But overall, when it comes to, if we have to focus on what the total food grain production will be in scenario 1, which is basically your average 3-year yields to government acreage numbers, then when I talk about total food grain as a group, it does not include oil seeds, cotton, and sugarcane. So the total food grain production for Kharif 2020, we are looking at it to be about 144 million metric tons, which is compared to last year's 143 million metric tons. Now, important to understand here that the government has set a target of about 149.9, as in close to 50 million tons for this year. So what our estimates indicate that if we have a timely withdrawal of monsoon, then some of the cereals could get impacted because of the timely withdrawal of monsoon, because these cereals, because they are sown late, require additional moisture, which is what therefore brings about a little decline. The growth is not as much as we expect when we see normal monsoons and when we see the acreage peak. But when we look at scenario 2, what is it that when we are talking about scenario 2? Scenario 2 is again the government acreage numbers, but we have adjusted it for the impact of the prolonged monsoon in the year 2019-20. If memory serves you all right, you would recollect that in 2019-20, we had monsoons way into November, and that had a lot of adverse impact on oil seeds, on pulses. But in scenario 2, when we look at for something like a coarse cereal, in scenario 1, when there is a normal withdrawal of monsoon, we might see a slight decline in production by about 2.5%. But if we see a scenario where monsoons withdraw late, then a coarse cereal could actually find benefit and could increase by about 2.5%. Another beneficiary would be cotton, because when monsoons prolong, we get the 3rd and the 4th picking, which increases production. Otherwise, in a scenario 2, we look at the production for food grain at about 147 million metric tons, closer to about the government's target of 150 metric tons. Like I explained, the major game changer here is coarse cereals, which tends to benefit when there is a late a withdrawal of monsoon. When it comes to forecast about the late withdrawal, of course, there has been reports that we might see prolonged monsoons, and in that case, we might see crops like I explained, coarse cereals benefiting, but it would definitely adversely impact. It would definitely impact your oil seeds crop. It would impact the sugarcane crop because of additional flooding. Sorry, but we might see, like I said, a benefit for coarse cereals, for cotton also, in terms of increased baking. Having said that, like we explained earlier, apart from the monsoon withdrawal, we also have to take into consideration the threat of locusts. So the government is doing everything it can. We just have to hope that we don't get a resurgence of the locust threat that we had seen towards the mid of the Kharif growing season. When we put all these factors of our Kharif production outlook into our CPI forecast, we are of the opinion that in the latest numbers for CPI, which came in at 6.7%. We are estimating that CPI number by the year end financial year 2021 to come down to about 4%. The food CPI is something that we see will have an immensely sharp decline, largely because of the Kharif crop outlook. Also, last year had seen heightened prices of vegetables, which we expect this year to come down. And given that scenario of a good Kharif production when it comes to food grain crops, when it comes to vegetable prices also, which is a key component, therefore we expect even food CPI to come down. So given both that we are estimating lower CPI and food CPI, we forecast about a 25 to 50 basis point reduction in the repo rates, largely because of the softening inflation in the second half of 2021. So this is basically how we wanted to summarize the Southwest monsoon, Kharif production implications, and of course its impact on inflation. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Rajni. That was really insightful, and I think you covered almost all the issues related to Kharif as well as the scenario that will unfold in the coming months. Next speaker is Mr. Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist of Care Ratings Limited. Madan, as you all know, has been one of the most keen followers of the agriculture market and the agriculture.
Mr. Mukherjee, you'll have to be a bit louder.
Hello. No, it's okay.
Still soft. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. This is better.
This is better. So I was introducing Mr. Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist, Care Ratings. So Madan, as we all know, is one of the keen and one of the most insightful followers of the agriculture economics, and his take on where the inflation and the food prices will move is well followed. If Madan, what is your thoughts on the Kharif crop outlook, and where do you see the prices and the inflation trajectory to move in the coming months?
Thanks, Sanjeev, and good afternoon to everyone. I think Chandrasekhar and Rajni have given a very good picture about what is the Kharif crop likely to be. And I wouldn't contest those numbers, maybe 1 million tons this way or that way, but on the whole, I think the picture is that Kharif harvest is going to be very good. And I think that's one of the reasons when we're looking at any forecast of GDP, we all say that agriculture is going to be one of the shining sectors. In fact, when we looked at the Q1 numbers, agriculture was the only segment among those 8 sectors which are covered, which had a positive rate of growth. I think that kind of a picture is going to continue even when we are talking of Rabi and for the entire year. So when we're talking of around 3.5 to 4% growth in the agricultural sector, I think everything has fallen in place because a good monsoon also means there's good moisture retention, which also means that Rabi crop will not be having any problem when it comes to supply of what we call water. So the crop should be very good. But I think one thing as an economist which really worries us, especially if I put what Rajni was talking of in terms of food prices, inflation really coming down, is that we need to distinguish between production and income. So I think there's a big difference out here because in terms of GDP, which is real GDP, which actually talks of what would be your crop scenario, what would be the output in, of course, measured in monetary terms. Output is something which is definitely going to increase, but the broader question is that is farmers' income really going to increase or not? Now, if you're talking a situation of food inflation being low, it necessarily means that if I'm going to pay a lower price, the increase in price is going to be lower for me, and the farmer will also have to be receiving a lower income. I mean, not exactly lower income, but the rate of increase of his income is going to be very much moderated. Of course, we have a different view on inflation because we believe that food inflation will continue to be a very much sticky. It's going to be in the region of around 6%, even as we go towards the end of the year. The reason being that it's not going to be actually these Kharif crops we are talking of, which will be creating the mischief. It's going to be more on your horticulture products. We've already seen the prices of potatoes and onions, tomatoes. I think they've started increasing in the market. If you go around shopping, you'll realize that what you were paying 30, 40 rupees a kilo last week, now you're paying something in the region of around 50 to 60s. In fact, tomatoes are going at close to 80 rupees a kilo. So definitely the prices of horticulture products go up, and given the weights in CPI, we could be expecting higher inflation. Of course, I'll come to that later on. But if you're talking a scenario of a very good production, what we have seen in the past is that when output increases, there's a tendency for oversupply in the market. And I would say that agriculture is the only field where when there's higher production, it actually leads to correction in prices, and the prices actually tend to get moderated. This is the kind of a problem which we have had even earlier in the last couple of years, where we have seen for specific crops, sometimes for soybean, where the prices have been going less than MSP, something which Chandrasekhar has also spoken of. So what does it really mean that in case the prices are going less than the MSP means you have to sell your product, you have no storage facility, so therefore the farmers sell in distress, and therefore they get a relatively lower income. So while production is going to be very good, the GDP numbers are going to look nice, but that same thing may not really happen in terms of farmers' income. It leads to this whole question of saying that the entire FMCG sector, the automobile sector, everybody is banking on the fact saying that rural spending is going to increase in the months of October, November, December. Festivals are coming, there's a marriage season, rural economy is booming because that's the only shining star, and therefore let us target these particular markets. In fact, if you look at the investor presentations of lots of these FMCG companies, automobile companies, statements made by various CEOs, they're all saying they're very, very bullish about the fact. In fact, I'm quite sure that they have done their own surveys and studies to feel that the demand is really going to increase, and that's why they feel that the backward linkages are going to flow from agriculture to industry. But here I would like to sound a word of caution really out here. As I mentioned, that the incomes may not really increase for the farmers, so their spending power may not go up. And we should also remember that this entire 10 million of population of migrants who have gone back to the rural areas, which has actually helped them to increase the sowing, the area under cultivation. Sowing is increased. And I'm sure even in terms of at the time of harvest, there will be fewer problems which they will face because there is enough labor which is available. But if you just remember that we're talking of an income increasing maybe by 2, 3, 4%. If I look at that average increase in MSPs, we're not even sure if you're going to get MSPs. Let's assume you get that increase in the market. The 2 to 3% increase in your income, the size of the family has actually gone up because the labor which has come from the urban areas to the rural areas, they're also going to live on the income which is being earned from the same piece of land. And whatever numbers Chandrasekhar and Rajni have presented, they're not really saying that, we're not saying that agricultural output is going to increase by 10%. So that even if my prices increase by 2 to 3%, my overall income is going to increase by 7 to 8%. That's not a likely scenario under these conditions, which really means that the power to consume may not be as we are hoping will be. And I'm not quite sure if people have worked out numbers in the FMCG segment and the auto segment, but the fact remains that the spending power is going to get restricted because the per capita income of your farming rural household may actually not increase significantly. Now, another interesting part is that we normally say that agriculture does very well, the rural economy does very well, and therefore there's going to be a major splurge in terms of spending. So let's assume that the income also goes up. But when you're looking at the rural economy, we should know that agriculture is one part of the rural economy. If I look at my entire GDP, we say around 14-15% is coming from agriculture and allied activities. If you look at the remaining 85% of GDP, we don't really have any latest numbers to say what part of this is coming from the rural side, what comes from urban. I think there's a Niti Aayog study which says that roughly around 35-40% of the balance is really coming from the rural areas. I'm really saying that my rural economy is around 40-45%, and my remaining, so when I'm talking about 15% of GDP is probably going to get this kind of an increase in income on account of a good Kharif crop. But if I'm talking of the non-rural income, there are your small SMEs which are there in the service sector, they're there in the manufacturing sector. Now, as long as the SME segment, they're not the large industries, they're all the SMEs. So unless these people are able to actually grow, and today we talk to any of the SME chambers of commerce, what do they tell you? They tell you that the lockdown has actually impoverished this particular segment. Okay, there's a lot of finance being provided through the financial system, banking system. I think the government has been proactive out there. But when there's no demand for my products, I don't have the labor to produce, there's been a tendency for the SMEs to get affected. So therefore, this part of the rural demand, which we are looking at, maybe another 30%, 25 to 30% of my GDP may not really be having this kind of consuming power. So the demand for manufactured products should not be overstated at this particular point of time. So one can guess that most of the companies would obviously have to be positive looking. They're actually thinking that this is a big chance which is going to come. And I'm sort of tempering the expectations by saying that this kind of spending power may not really be that large. Now, that is one part of it. Now let's assume there is a certain amount of increase in income. Now look at this kind of a situation we have here. There is a large amount of uncertainty. So what do you do when there's uncertainty, especially if you're in a village? And today there are talks that when you're talking of this infection increasing, there's maximum amount of testing which is being done in the urban areas in Mumbai, Delhi. So therefore you have large numbers coming. But if you do more testing in the rural areas, will those numbers also start increasing? We really don't know. But people staying out there will definitely be apprehensive about what their future is likely to be. Should I go around and start buying a two-wheeler, a three-wheeler, a tractor? Should I buy a Jeep? Is this the kind of time when you will actually go ahead and overspend? The answer is probably not. They're going to be very, very much cautious. On the other hand, I think Chandrasekhar will be the expert out here to say that gold prices have been going up, and typically your rural households will say that, look, if my income is also increasing, let me invest in gold today because the price is going up. It's a bull run. It's a safe kind of an investment for me to make. Let me go in for gold rather than buying a tractor at this particular point of time when I don't know what the likely scenario is going to be in future. So in short, I would say that Kharif crop is definitely going to be good. It may not translate into income of farmers increasing at a commensurate rate. And to the extent that it increases, that is notwithstanding what I've spoken about, the per capita income not going up because of the more people in the family. So I'm dividing instead of by 4 heads, I have 5 or 6 heads, which I'm dividing. There may be a lot of caution which may be held. And in fact, today, if you look at some of the RBI statistics, which show that currency holding has gone up, even people like you and I were holding on to currency because we think that's a very safe thing to do in these uncertain times. So currency holding has gone up, and I believe a lot of this holding also is taking place in the rural areas where there is this high level of uncertainty. In this kind of a scenario, I would say that yes, agriculture sector is going to do well in terms of output. Income may not increase at a commensurate pace, and the kind of spending which we're expecting on a large scale may also not really materialize at this particular point. Now, coming back to the basic, yes, Chandrasekhar, you wanted to interrupt. Yes. Should I carry on? Okay. So just a couple of points now. So as I said, contrary to what Rajni has pointed out, we still believe that inflation, food inflation in particular, will remain high. And it will remain high. We feel that the CPI inflation, even by the time we go to March, will be in the 5+% region. Food inflation will be in the 5 to 6% region. The reason being not because of your rice and soybean, edible oils and pulses price. Pulses could always still be the joker in the pack and register higher prices. Because I've seen that even when we're talking of good production in the previous years, I've been paying a higher price in the market for my tur dal and moong dal and urad dal. So I think all of us get pulses is always one kind of an uncertain factor. But definitely the horticulture side and the kind of disruptions which happen almost every year now are going to create pressures on inflation. So what does this mean finally for the Reserve Bank of India? Yes, we also would go along with Rajni and say, yes, there's going to be another 25 to 50 basis points reduction in the repo rates. It's very much likely. There is space for it, but that will not be linked to inflation. Because I think the RBI has made it very clear in the month of March when they announced a policy at the time of the shutdown that the RBI or the MPC may not be looking only at inflation, you also have to look at growth. So today when we're talking of a decline of 24% in our GDP, and there's going to be another negative number coming for certain in the second quarter, third quarter may be close to a negative number, maybe marginally around that zero or positive number. I think the drive to get the growth back on path could be the motivating factor for the Reserve Bank of India to actually lower the interest rates. But let's not expect it in the next policy because I think right now it could be a bit too bold to reduce interest rates at a time when your inflation is still in the region of around 6.7%. And we have seen that prices of certain commodities have been going up. If you also look at core inflation, we have seen the airlines increasing their fares. We have seen education becoming more expensive. The healthcare has gone up. Your entertainment, as in when you open up, that recreation costs are going to go up. So I think even your core inflation is going to be about. So therefore, we would not be expecting an interest rate cut in the next policy. But definitely there is room, as I told you, as growth comes down, there will be pressure from the government. But the government always feels we should keep lowering the interest rates. I think industry also feels the same thing. So therefore, there would be some kind of these kind of pressures on the MPC to lower the rates. So we can expect lower rates, but probably not in the next policy. I think I'll stop here and thank you for a patient here.
Thank you, Madan. Thanks, and as always, thanks for tapering our expectations. We all were very bullish about the And bringing us back to life, boss, don't expect too much. There are lots of ifs and buts before you see a strong rural recovery boosting your overall growth. And thanks for laying the fact on a very important fact that the farmers' income will be vital to see all kinds of consumption boost that we are expecting from the rural markets in the coming months. And before I proceed further, I'm my heartfelt apologies to Mr. Poddar and Mr. Barwale, both of you. I'm sorry I did not welcome you all, both of you, and I hope you guys don't mind for that. And just before I move into question answer session, I think we are already running short of time, and a lot of you must be having a lot of questions. I just have one question for all the three panelists, which is the pressing thing that is happening in the markets now today, in agriculture and the rural scenario is that how do you all of you three, how do you all of you see the ordinances playing out? Means, do you see the impact of the ordinances in the coming Kharif season? Do you see some kind of market players moving into the rural areas to buy the fruits directly, which could have some impact on the buying on the prices or something? If I can start with Madan, how do you see the ordinances playing out, or is it too early to speak about the ordinances?
My personal view is that this season will, of course, be the first season after this ordinance has come. So there are a lot of questions which all participants have, because in bits and pieces, certain states did have this that plants can buy directly from farmers. But in Maharashtra, for example, the state did give licenses to traders that yes, you can go and buy from the farmers. But there was a caveat that you have to always buy above MSP. So there were these computations that the state has put in when they did permit, even before this ordinance came, to buy, where farmers could be approached directly by private participants. But of course, these ordinances are landmark, and this would be the first season when we will see how it plays out. We'll have to see what kind of role does the state play, especially in those states which is not the central government political party-driven states. What kind of hindrances, if any, is put? How does the APMC, the intermediaries, react to it? Because it is a large market that could get sidelined if they don't provide the value addition, which is what they will have to in the ordinance. Because the ordinance does not say that the APMCs will cease to exist or they don't play a role. It's just that for the fees that they charge, they'll have to provide a value to it, which was getting lost completely. It was just that farmers were compelled to sell at APMCs, therefore, whatever restrictions that was there in getting new markets did not come to them. So to summarize, my view is that this season will, of course, we will see the first big implication of this ordinance actually playing out, and we'll have perhaps many lessons to learn from it.
Madan, Madan, what is your view on this? What reports are you? Yeah, can you hear me? You are not audible.
Sir, you're please unmute from your end, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. What kind of feedback are you getting from the ground or from the people about?
No, in fact, I think this is a positive move, but I don't think there'll be too much of an impact in this particular season. And we should also remember that while the ordinance says that you can do this kind of procurement, but when it comes to crossing over states and making the purchases, that would definitely still be a problem, because I think every state has its own rules. But as far as the procurement is taking place your purchase is taking place from within your home state, yes, definitely does look that there could be a number of corporates who could be interested in doing such a thing. And I think that this will be a very good test, but I wouldn't say it's the ultimate test, because these are fairly unusual times for us to expect a big wave of this kind of thing to take place. This kind of purchase.
Chandrasekhar sir, what do you think of these?
There are three ordinances, and in my view, the three ordinances are going to play out differently. One, it was too late for contract farming. Contract farming will not happen, obviously hasn't happened, and it's probably people will explore, corporates will explore it for next Kharif season is one. Private markets, people are still groping in the dark. They still don't know how to set up private markets and how to sell. In the private markets, MSP will not be applicable. For that's going to be an attraction. But 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 the private entrepreneur who wants to set up a private market is going to be very wary of other political and other pressures, and therefore, as of now, people are exploring, trying to convert their warehouses into a marketplace, etc. That process is going on. It's not going to be easy. The only thing that's going to work is the Essential Commodities Act, which has been diluted, and therefore, my strong sense is corporates and exporters, processors, mills are all ready and willing, and they're probably starting to build inventory, and which is why we see a slight increase in the price of pulses, for example. And therefore, all this, the ordinances are positive, but they'll play out only probably next year or even a year later. But I have, Sanjeev, if you don't mind, 2 or 3 observations which I want to make. I completely agree with Madan that rural incomes are not going to rise very attractively just because we are going to produce or harvest a little, slightly more crop. Here I'm actually seeing again a mixed picture. For example, in case of pulses, we are in a situation where prices, as compared with the last 2 years, I'm talking to 2018 and 2019, when you compare whether it is tuar or chana or moong or whatever, those prices, the current prices are at least 25 to 30% higher. And they are now, after 2.5 years, testing the minimum support price. So to that extent, the farmers are definitely going to see better prices, which they didn't see in the previous 2 years. So pulses are going to be one exception. Second could be oil seeds, both soybean and groundnut. Prices are testing the minimum support price, and therefore I would think pulses and oilseed growers have a reasonable chance to earn incomes as a result of higher production. They will earn higher income primarily because of an increase in prices as compared with the previous 2 Kharif seasons. That's one. But I have concerns about maize growers. I have concerns about cotton growers. Maize prices are ruling far below the minimum support price, and I don't see any prospect of prices rising at all. Cotton, we are actually we are facing a large crop and a very large opening stock. For cotton, prices are going to remain extremely soft, much below the minimum support price, forcing the cotton corporation to intervene in the market. For cotton growers may not get the kind of price they might have expected at the beginning of the season. Therefore, it's actually, in my view, presenting a mixed picture. For some crops, farmers may get a better price. Again, let me repeat, better price as compared with what they got in the last two years, 2019 and 2018. So this is one. The point is, we have enough and more stocks in the country, or whether it is cotton or maize or pulses or oil seeds. Oil seeds, of course, there's a shortage. There is a small increase that I'm expecting, but our oil import will obviously will continue. In Rajini's presentation, I found her oil seed production estimate was 14.77 or something. I don't know if you're actually talking about 24.77. Is that a typographical error? I'm looking at a soybean crop of at least 11 to 12 million tons. I'm looking at a groundnut crop of between 7 and 7.5 million tons. Sesame crop will be at least 6 lakh to 7 lakh tons. Castor crop will be between 12 and 15 lakh tons. Therefore, when you put all this, the number comes closer to 20 million tons. And at the higher level, it comes to about 22 million tons. Therefore, Rajini might probably revisit her numbers. I'm sure there is some typographical error. I think with this, I'll hand this over back.
Yeah, I have one question for you, Chandrasekhar sir. On sugarcane, both you and Rajini have given a very optimistic picture: 390, 387 million tons. So what happens to the sugar prices, the dues and everything? Means, do we see another year of low sugar prices, mounting dues and problem for the
Ab-
mills?
Absolutely. Sugar prices will get low. There'll be pressure from the sugar mills on the government of India to allow more flexibility in payment, and they will also demand more subsidy for export. And when we produce more sugar and export sugar, we're actually exporting water.
Yeah.
And and water is getting scarce, more and more scarce, as we know. And therefore, the Niti Aayog has said that our acreage under sugarcane has to be brought down by about 3 lakh hectares. And I wrote a commentary about probably 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, saying, yes, I think that's a good move. But how will you decide where to cut the acreage? Obviously, you need to cut acreage where yield levels are low. Okay, or that was
I am
my
little
advice.
optimistic. I want little optimistic. Can I speak?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr.
Sir,
Kotak.
please.
Yes, Mr. Kotak.
Yeah.
See, I feel little optimistic in one sense that it may not increase farmers' income, but the supply chains will get strengthened and new processes, new products development will take place, and it will have a ripple effect, because ripple effect is still to come, because now supply chain due to government proactive policy, and also because of the good flow of supply, the kind of the processing and the kind of the manufacturing, it can have a ripple effect. So this is my point, that I am not as pessimistic as the people are. There is going to be a very substantive effect of agriculture on MSMEs also, because many MSMEs use the raw material. So it will be a very competitive raw material and new opportunities can bring up. This is my view. Thank you.
I think we can now open the floor for questions. I'm setting a lot of them, lot of questions. I think the chat itself, I'm seeing a lot of them. Yeah.
Whoever's having questions, please put your names in the chat section so that I can just unmute you. Who's having a question, please raise your hands or put your name in the chat section so that we can unmute you.
These questions, could I just answer, because I think somebody posed a question on the chat box, saying that when I am saying that the CPI inflation food inflation is going to be high, how does that gel with the fact that I'm saying that the farmer's income will not be going up? So here actually I would say we need to distinguish between what happens at the WPI level and what happens at the CPI level. So today we see there's a big difference between what's happening to WPI, which is closer to what the farmer is getting, where the increase has been much more moderate than what we are seeing in case of the CPI. So I hope that would explain as to why I've taken this particular stance.
Let me also add on to what Madan is saying, that look at pulses. Vis-a-vis the wholesale prices of pulses, retail prices are 100%, 120%, 130%. There's an extraordinary amount of value addition and a margin at the retail level. Who gets this margin? Well, that's a matter of inquiry. And therefore, if the Reserve Bank were to go by retail prices of food products, retail pulses like food products, the retail prices are going to remain high. Retail prices of edible oils are going to remain high, and therefore that's going to send out a certain signal to the policymakers and of course to the monetary policy committee. My sense is somewhere the supply chain needs to get tighter, and the retail prices. I'm not advocating any control, but I think today there is an uncontrolled inflation, retail inflation, where I believe there is a scope for reduction of retail prices, particularly packaged branded commodities. Yeah.
Okay. Can I take questions from the audience, or we should go through the chat? Sir, should I take questions from the audience?
Yeah, you can do both. No, if there is no question from the
Okay.
audience,
No, no,
take it
there
from
are
the chat.
people.
Yeah,
No, there are
question.
Yeah,
people
sure.
who want to ask questions.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure,
Yeah.
of course.
So, Mr. Nagarajan, could you ask your question? I'm asking you to unmute yourselves, Mr. Nagarajan. Please unmute. Yeah. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you very much.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, you're very much
Yeah.
No,
audible.
my question has already been answered. So thank you very much. Mr. Saddam
Okay.
explained that he was talking about WPI and CPI. So the
Okay.
driver for the CPI staying higher, maybe Mr. Madan Fadnavis can explain why that should stay high when WPI is expected to drop.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mad.
I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear what was being said.
Could you please repeat your question, Mr. Nagarajan? Nagarajan? Yeah,
Am
could
I
you?
audible now?
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
audible?
you're audible.
So my question is that why would CPI stay high in your estimate when WPI is likely to become lower?
Yeah, as Chandrasekhar was mentioning, there is a big difference between the wholesale and the retail prices, and that's because of the intermediation which takes place. So typically, we also see at times when the WPI goes up, means that the mandis are paying a slightly higher price, it gets magnified at the CPI level, at the consumer level. That's because of the intermediate. Like for example, if you're buying your vegetables today at your doorstep, you should remember that comes from Vashi, it comes to Dadar. From there are at least another two levels of people who are picking it up and selling it to you. So therefore, everybody is adding their costs. It's not just the margins which they're adding. The cost also goes up by the time it reaches you. When we look at the mandi price, we actually are talking of something which is really far off from us.
Okay, there is another question from Mr. Shrikant Kuvekar. Are we going fast on ECA amendment without creating enabling infrastructure to implement it effectively? Because legalizing hoarding has started taking toll on consumer without increase in realization at farm gate. So instead of disintermediation, opposite is happening. Yes? Yes,
Sanjeev, may I?
yes, sir.
I mean, I
Yes,
want
sir.
to check with the moderator. Okay, let me answer it this way. The Essential Commodities Act has been hanging over the heads of processors and exporters and traders like a Damocles sword. I think it is a welcome step that the restrictions on storage have been removed for select commodities, including pulses and grains and other commodities. What is important is by removing this restriction, the government has facilitated improved marketability of the crop. This is going to actually help the farmer. If pulses processors and traders and exporters do not start buying from the market for fear that that law will be applicable to them, that will hurt the marketability of the crop. Currently, oilseeds, pulses, rice, wheat, all these crops, there is no limit. You can build stocks, and that improves the marketability. It is good for the farmer. But also remember, there is an outside chance that the government may invoke this law. Therefore, when you talk of hoarding, where is the question of hoarding? Is there a shortage? When there is a shortage, there'll be hoarding. We talked about hoarding and black marketing 20 years ago. And Srikant, those days are over long ago. And therefore, I think let us, even to use that language, that this is legalized hoarding is something, I don't know, it doesn't go well with me. Yeah.
So just
But
to
I
add,
still think that during times of shortages, these kind
Yes,
of
yes.
issues have happened. And if you look at pulses, because I think pulses is probably the only, I would say it's a very sensitive commodity, because we have seen in the past for things like tour, where there's been a shortfall, and then there's a tendency that by hoarding it, you are able to artificially push up the prices.
Correct. And in 2015-16, if you remember, there was a massive raid on a number of people. Cargoes were seized overnight. There was a huge penal action that has completely demoralized the trade. I think we need to get out of that. I think
It's
the
happened for
days of
onions also, Chandrasekhar. No? Even for
yeah,
onions,
right. I know
in
that's a
onion
tragedy.
prices, they say
I
that
agree. I agree.
stock them.
I agree. I think it is actually, if there are storage restrictions, I think it is anti-farmer. If there are export restrictions, it is anti-farmer. This is my belief. Anyway.
From my side, if I can add to one of the Shrikant's questions, which he has put on chat, is that you are saying that when the oil pulses pulses are inching towards the MSP after 2.5 years, but do you see the same level remaining when the new crop comes into the market, or that they will fall below the MSP, which will necessitate a more robust procurement by NAFED, and we all go back to the same old thing?
May I?
Yes, sir.
Okay, may I? Okay.
Yeah.
It's like this. I think I wrote probably a couple of days ago in Business Line. After 2.5 years, a little over 2 years, the pulses market is today in a state of equilibrium. We had huge inventory burden that carried on from 2017, 2018, 2019. Now with import restrictions, and of course the supply of free ration of chana to vulnerable families for about 8 or 9 months. All this is reduced the inventory burden, and the market is now coming to a state of equilibrium, and that state of balance or equilibrium is actually lifting prices up. But once harvest starts, the market knows the size of the harvest. And despite this knowledge about the size of the harvest, prices are not falling, which I think is very good, primarily because my very strong sense is pulse growers are going to get much better prices this Kharif season as compared with what they had received in the last 2 years.
Yes, Mr. Barvale, you have a question. Could you put your question?
Yeah, coming to the point on the recent export ban for onions that was put in place. It would be good to hear from the speakers. How with the recent ordinances that have been proposed by the government, when small things cause the government to put these bans in place. How do you see that the ordinances can actually be practically implemented? And will the government really have the gut to push through these ordinances and make them happen on the ground?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me take, and I'm sure Madan will also respond, and Rajini also will have an answer.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ashish, for the question. One, shortages don't happen overnight. First one. Therefore, when the government suddenly bans a commodity, export of a commodity overnight, it reflects on the lack of commercial intelligence amongst policymakers. And I've said this so many times in the past, and I'm not afraid of saying it again. Therefore, it's a failure of the policymakers in reading advanced signals from the market. And therefore, this is not the first time it's happened. I think it happened last year or the year before, 2019 or 2018. Even that time, there was a lot of noise. I wrote an editorial. It's again happening, but I think it's not good. Why should you ban export? Of course, onions have become politically sensitive, but I think we need to, when we talk of doubling our agriculture exports from 30 billion to 60 billion, if we keep tinkering with the export policy, well, I don't know how we are going to achieve our objective of raising our export. Number one. Number two, usually there is a provision for pre-ban commitments. This time, even that has not been mentioned in the circular, in the notification. People who have farmer producer companies, farmer groups, private export trading houses who have an export commitment, what will they do? Of course, they will invoke force majeure condition, but I think it doesn't enhance the image of India in the international market. I think these kinds of bans, I'm afraid, I think have no place in modern India. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a slightly different view out here, because I feel that in a country like ours, where I think agricultural commodities, especially with what we are talking of essential commodities, has an impact on the CPI, that is where the consumers keep getting affected because of shortage of supplies, there would be, I think it's something we'll have to live with. So it's one thing to say it's not the ideal thing. And as what I'll agree with Chandrasekhar, it's a case of saying that there's a failure of market intelligence. We have not really set up that kind of a system as to how do I monitor both my exports as well as imports. Even if I look at it the other way around, when there's a shortfall, why is it that we accept that there is a shortage only after onions reaches 150 rupees a kilo? Then by the time I float tenders, 3 weeks have passed, then the stock comes in, normal production goes up, prices come down, nobody knows what to do with the stocks. So I think having an exim policy well defined and having a good market intelligence system, I think is the practical way of going about it, which I think is possible.
Trigger points. I think we need, for export and import, have trigger points when and then don't ban export, impose a duty. You know, tarification is the way forward. Impose duties and don't ban import or export. Keep everything open. Adjust your import duties and export duties to either encourage or discourage import and export activity. I think that should be the way. That should be the way forward.
I think we can take one more question from a farmer. That is, he's from a farmer from Bihar, Mr. Manoj Kumar. Could you ask your question? He has a very small question on the financials for farmer. Yes, Mr. Manoj.
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
Yeah.
this is Manoj Kumar. I am just I am owner of the Sadhu Farms. So what I am experiencing once we started the cultivation, there is a huge gap between intent of the government and what is happening on the ground. The farmers are not getting the correct prices because, and they are forced to sell their produce on there is a huge gap of the logistics and all that. Market is not here, and even that I am not blaming anyone, but we have to redesign our system. Like that, KVK, we have purchased the KVK everywhere, and technocrats are there, and they are from all walks of life. Why not we separate it from the farmers have a requirement should be interested with the KVK with a more power rather than the collector and the district administration having. This should and let the collector do the law and order situation everything. Here, because they don't need, they don't know the requirement of a farmer. Here we are forced to sell our mango. I have grown the mango this year from the 5 acres of land, and I was forced to sell. COVID was there, and 20 rupees, 25 rupees, the good, the Malda that we say the Langda Aam, we were forced to sell at the 20, 25. There were no seller was there, the purchaser was there. Okay.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Similar,
could you keep your question
okay.
to the point, sir?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Similarly, the moong rate is coming. The moong prices are there. We are okay. It is 40 rupees. I'm telling you, it is neither the wholesale price nor the retailer price. The people have got the racket and syndicated. They are selling at the 40 rupees, and no government administration is able to do anything. Even to your utter surprise, what is happening in the ground realities. Okay. 40 kg is a 1 month, 40 kg is a considered 1 month, and all that. These the local baniyas are purchasing at the 40, charging 42 kg a month, and 2 kg additional they are allowing. Nobody is here to listen it. And moreover, there is an acute shortage of packs. Are there packs are here for the warehouses are there, but no one is purchasing and keeping the prices. Okay, I have traveled a lot from Maharashtra to Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. There are some government, they are purchasing and providing the, okay, but there is no central mechanism working across for all the farmers and all that. So we need to work out and we have to involve some farmers on the policy making and the KVK so that the real input from the grassroots level. Before joining farming, I have left my career from the Border Security Force as an officer. In the corporate, I was vice president with the Tata Steel. And now I am doing cultivation. I have come with okay, we will go for the contact farming. Okay, but no, to your utter surprise, sir, I have visited 10 banks with my project and all that, asking for the fund for, okay, if PO we are making it or something, we have to take the project with the 10, and here the holding is very small. 3 acre, 4 acre, 5 acre, the farmers are there. Okay. So
Yes,
Sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
I think
Sir,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
question is understood.
I think
Just let the speakers reply. Yeah.
I think Mr. Manoj wants to, what is saying is that there's a lot of disconnect between what is the government policy and what is happening on the ground and how it is implemented. I think Rajni was pointing out towards something on this, that we need to see how the things pan out in the months to come, because the intent looks good, but how it is captured in the ground level, how things move in the ground, whether there is is Rajni there? Yeah.
Yeah, Rajni is there. I've unmuted you also.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think Rajni was
Right.
pointing out on this, that the intent looked good, and the focus looks good, but there is a lot of gap between what is happening on ground and what is the policy, and we need to wait and watch for things to move in the coming few months. And Rajni, coming to I think that was Mr. The gentleman's question. Coming to add into to what the person said, you in your presentation had made a very interesting point. In the southern states, there is an impact of the government schemes like the Telangana's Right to Bandhu, which has led to some amount of improvement in their acreage. This thing. Can you just a bit explain that how the schemes have helped in pushing up this thing? I think this also answers the gentleman's question, that there is how the disconnect can be bridged.
I think both are separate issues. Like I was saying in the first, when you asked me about what the ordinances would mean, I truly believe that this season, especially for the marketing, the private markets, that particular ordinance, which Chandrasekhar ji correctly put into perspective, that there are three main ordinances. I restricted myself to commenting only on one of the ordinance. And that ordinance this season, because it's the first season after the ordinance has come into play, will be a learning experience. We'll have a lot to learn. And if I can add to the onion crisis also that we're currently witnessing, which goes back essentially on the Essential Commodities Act. You saw one price rise for a commodity like onion, and there is a ban towards exports now. So I guess so a lot needs to be changed there as well. Maybe the connecting dots are missing, like an export-import policy that was correctly stated. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Let me. The Essential Commodities Act only allows traders and others to store and move. It has nothing to do with the import-export policy. And therefore, the point that you're making is so valid, that there is no connection between what the Agriculture Ministry is doing and what the Commerce Ministry is doing to undo all that.
So that's why perhaps all this will be taken as learning experiences. More and more government bodies are talking to each other. So I think this will be a case in point, the onion case, that here you have an Essential Commodities Act, because I know from many of the agri traders that we interact on a day-to-day basis, this onion ban has come as a shock, because they are like, with what confidence do we go and procure the pulses during the Kharif season? What if pulses goes back to those high prices of 200 rupees a kg? Will we meet the same fate? The onion example is not going down well during this very critical time. And therefore, it is learning experience, unfortunately or fortunately, but at least we are on that path, which is the good news. A lot to learn is perhaps, the fact that it is a path under progress. And sir, since I just got unmuted, I have to tell you that the oilseeds estimates that we have put in estimates, because we're not taking the government estimates. So according to our estimates, which we've not taken government port estimates, we have taken the the numbers that we collect from traders. So it is yes, these are private estimates, and therefore when we look at that private estimates, take the average yield, multiply it to acreage, so we see about 1 million tons more. But perhaps if this year we see 1.5 million increase for soybeans, maybe close to 1 million for groundnut, then this year's average yields will increase, and therefore then when we do that exercise, we'll get the numbers. Otherwise, the numbers is something that we have not
very bullish. That's very bullish from what you're saying. But just to answer Manoj ji, आपने जितना भी सवाल उठाया है, I just want to say, राज्य सरकार का बहुत बड़ा भूमिका है. Look at every state, agriculture, agri marketing are state subjects. So you should also bring pressure on your state government to reform markets, number one. Bihar mein, there is no agencies at all. Number one. Number two, your state government also must put pressure on NAFED, for example, to procure pulses from Bihar if the prices are below the minimum support price. But I think a relief for low prices of agriculture commodities where there is a procurement mechanism, you will have to work with your state government authorities to have procurement agencies there. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mukherjee.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions, and we can have a separate another session on the ordinances and the impact on them, because it's such a lively and important topic, and it will not go away so soon and so easily, because it will keep on unfolding as the days come. I will now request Mr. Ashish Barwale, Chairman of IMC, Agriculture and Food Processing and Director of Mayako Private Limited, to just share his vote of thanks on the event.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks at the end of this very interactive and insightful discussion. I thank everyone and for the lively discussions, and would especially like to start with thanking the speakers, Mr. Madan Sabnavis, for giving us the alternate view on what's going to happen with incomes rather than just the production. I think it's a unique distinction which was a welcome intellectual discussion to have, as was the distinction between the CPI and the WPI discussion. I'd also like to thank Ms. Rajshri Panikar for illuminating the crop shifts along with the production estimates for oilseeds in particular, and the increase in the demands for or in the sowing for crops like groundnut. And then Mr. Chandrasekhar for providing us the overall acreage estimates as well as the production estimates, and as always for the lively discussions in the Q&A. The discussions that we've had today only highlight the complexity of the agricultural industry in India, as well as the policies that we are faced with. The government is trying to do the right thing, but oftentimes, because of the different constituents involved, different motivations of the participants in our economy, there are difficult decisions to be made. I strongly feel that discussions like this will help us eventually lead to the right decisions being made. I'd like to thank Mr. Mukherjee for moderating the panel and helping us through these very interesting discussions, and also for all the participants for their lively participation and stimulating questions. Finally, on behalf of the IMC, I'd like to also thank our president for participating and giving the welcoming note. And on behalf of the Agribusiness Committee, we hope that such discussions continue, and we value your participation and look forward to many such discussions going ahead. Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you all.
Okay, God bless you all. Take care, stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for that lively discussion.
Sanjeev, thank you very much. We should be in touch.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rajni. Thanks, Madan. Thanks.
Thank you.